Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and this is the Daily Brief. So, yesterday I was talking about how I think the tempo would be slowing down, and I don't know that I have evidence that that's the case yet, but I don't see when I look at news articles or Twitter or even the statistics here, I don't see evidence that it's ramping up. I think it's going to be slowing down. 840 personnel off the battlefield, only 10 tanks destroyed yesterday. There were 50 fuel vehicles, so it's not like the fighting is stopped, but it is. There's just not a lot to see on Twitter right now. Um, Most of our news is going to be political, like this. So here's Putin talking yesterday. I'm not ready to talk about what and how and when we should annex, but I do not rule that out. In view of the tragic events taking place today, we will be forced at some point, when we deem it appropriate, to create a sanitary zone in the current territories subordinate to the Kyiv regime. Now, so what he's talking about here is we want to create this extra buffer zone beyond the territories that we've already taken. So the territories that they've already taken could have been the buffer zone. I kind of agree with him, but I would put the sanitary zone around Kursk and Belgorod and Krasnodar and Rostov. I mean, I think that's a more appropriate place to create a sanitary zone. Okay, next story. German coalition cracks deepen over Ukraine policy. So there's fracturing pretty much everywhere politically, but that doesn't mean that it's all broken. It just means you got to pay attention to what's going on. Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Social Democratic Party, caught in the crossfire by its coalition partners due to its softening stance on support for the war-torn country. Last week's speech by the SPD parliamentary leader, in which he rhetorically asked whether it was not time to think about how to freeze a war and end it later. Well, that's not going to work. That's a non starter right there. Okay. Then we have in the United States, the White House says that Macron has every right to talk about sending French troops to Ukraine. Now, President Macron has been remarkably sensible and hawkish in the last few weeks. It's like he's gotten the memo and he understands we really need to double down, do something. Perhaps it is a silver lining to what is happening in the US that we're not actually stepping into what we need to be stepping into, and we should be doing that. So, the unfortunate events that are happening here, the silver lining to it is that the Europeans do seem to be stepping up. I can't speak for President Macron. Obviously, he continues to make points publicly, and obviously, he has every right to do that. Okay, that's fair. But then they also double down. At the same time, he recalled that the United States has made its position clear that it is not intending to send U.S. troops, and that's also been our policy all the way through. Okay, speaking of the United States, here's Donald Trump, and here's what he had to say in an interview in Fox News. He was asked whether he would continue to help Ukraine with weapons or allow Putin to occupy part or all of Ukraine if he is reelected president. He expressed hope that it does not come to that. That's not really a good answer. I mean, like, which side of the fence are you on? And because he can't come to an answer, it makes you not trust him. And there's a good reason to not trust him. According to Trump, the 9 months between now and January 20th, 2025, the date of the next presidential inauguration, are an eternity in terms of war and politics. He's right, but I still don't trust him. At the same time, Trump said that there would never be a war under his presidency. Now, this is why I don't trust him to be able to be useful to Kyiv, because he seems to have staked out a weird position within Republican politics. Republicans have historically been the hawks and not the doves, and he has staked out a position where he's against war. He just wants to make a deal. He can't. But if the bad guys are fighting, you have to do something about the bad guys that are doing that. And Trump's argument seems to be, well, but I'm just not going to have a war. And I don't think that's going to hold. At the same time, Trump said that there would never be a war under his presidency. Quote, I would have negotiated a deal. I don't even know if I would have had to negotiate. They, the Russians, never would have attacked while I was president. If we had a real leader, he, Putin, never would have done that. I remember he didn't do that. He didn't do it for 4 years, and there was no real threat that he would do it. So, according to Trump, he spoke to Putin about it. I said, you can't do it. You can't do it. He would never have done that while I was president. But now Trump is faced with a new reality, and that is it is happening. And so, if it is happening, what would he do? And I don't know that he would support Ukraine. I mean, I'd like to think he would, but I just don't think I see no evidence to lead me to believe that this is what he would actually do. And that's just the unfortunate reality of where we are. Said you can't do it. He never would have done that if I was president, but he's already in there now. So what will you do? The real question is, what will you do now? What would you do to dislodge him or make your deal? You need to answer that. And it's not going to be a pretty answer, I don't think. President of Ukraine met with U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. And so this was on the president's website, of diplomatic language from Zelensky, although I'm sure he must be somewhat disappointed. The head of state emphasized that regular visits of Senator Graham demonstrated the unwavering and powerful support of the United States for our country in the fight against Russian aggression. Okay, but he knows just as well as we do that we're locked into this, um, not able to get things out of the House of Representatives yet, and it's coming. It takes far longer than it should, but it's coming. We see a strong determination of the U.S. Congress to step up support for Ukraine, and we are grateful for it. It's critically important for us that Congress soon completes all the necessary procedures and makes a final decision on the allocation of macro financial assistance to Ukraine that will strengthen the Ukrainian economy and our armed forces. Here he's not talking about weapons, and I found that to be a little odd. We're talking about macro financial assistance, and that's partly because of what actually Graham has been saying. So he's shifting a little what he's saying because of what Graham is saying here. Graham meets with Zelensky in Ukraine. Zelensky hosted Graham in Kyiv. This is from The Hill. So Graham's visit comes just weeks after he voted against the $95 billion defense and foreign aid package in the Senate. Now, it passed through the Senate, so it didn't need Graham to vote for him, but Graham was just, he left Kyiv last time talking about how we stand with you and, right? The bill includes $60 billion for Ukraine. South Carolina Republican is one of the most outspoken GOP advocates for supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Graham offered a stark prediction for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, you could talk tough about stuff, but that's not the same as actually providing the resources that are necessary. Putin will go down in history the way all people like Putin go down in history. It's just a matter of time. He said, well, that may very well be true, but that, it's like saying if I just give you a attaboy, a pat on the back, a good job, I don't have to give you a raise at work. Attaboy doesn't feed your family. The same kind of thing here. He said he's calling on the Biden administration to send longer range artillery, accelerate F 16 training for Ukrainians, and designate Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. Okay, well, that would be useful to do that. Look like Congress has not passed a funding bill for Ukraine since the end of 2022. This is, and I didn't highlight this here, but I should, when a Democrat majority passed its fourth aid package for the country. The $95 billion supplemental still passed the upper chamber 70-29 after 22 Republicans joined the majority of Senate Democrats to pass the package. Johnson, now this is what's happening here and some of the mutations, so you need to be paying attention to this. Johnson is instead offering up an alternative plan and told Republican senators last week he plans to send them legislation that includes new military funding for Kyiv after the House considers a separate spending package to prevent a government shutdown this Friday. So this is what's coming. And McCall talked about this as well, that he's been assured that this is on the table after we get through the funding build, trying to prevent a government shutdown from becoming an issue. Okay, then they'll take this up. So it could be within a matter of just a couple of weeks. But what will this bill look like? Graham expresses support for turning foreign aid into a loan during Monday's meeting. During my meeting with President Zelensky, I informed him that given the crisis at the United States southern border and our overwhelming debt, President Trump's idea of turning aid from the United States into a no-interest, waivable loan. Now, waivable loan, I don't know whether it will be waived or won't be waived, but whatever it is, waivable loan is the most likely path forward. So it's a loan, but could be waivable, but we don't know, is the most likely path forward. This is not only true for aid for Ukraine, but for other countries across the board. Okay, well, let's say that it is. Do something with it. It's unfortunate that it's mutated like this because of Trump, who's not even the president, but the party is walking as if he is going to be the president. The plan, however, has raised several questions about exactly how Johnson intends to get both funding for Kyiv and stricter border security measures into one package, and how he'll shore up Democratic support if he strays too far from the Senate passed foreign aid package. So it could go through another round of negotiations between, like, the House could pass something and then it has to go to the Senate to wrestle with that to see if they can agree to what the House has passed. So it could be a while, and the longer it is, the worse it is for Ukraine. Okay, so I've talked about this a number of times, how to contact Mike Johnson. You can contact his office directly with this number. If you just go to my videos and put in the search contact, you'll find 3 videos. How to contact Mike Johnson, how to contact your congressman, and if you want to contact your senator as well. So I've put this information all here. Please use it. Please contact Mike Johnson's office. In the meantime, let's look at this. Commander-in-Chief General Syrsky said this: technologies and manufacturability are the keys to our edge over the enemy. Unmanned systems, that's drones, are of the essence here. So my priority is developing their use. We're looking for asymmetric solutions to ensure intangible advantage over a quantitatively superior adversary. So I think there's 2 things to take away from here. One, that Syrsky is not just applying old Soviet doctrine. He's been criticized for this before, but that he's actually looking for a way to fight where he has an advantage, and he sees the advantage in technology. So here's one of the ways that the Ukrainians can do this. They can create cheap drones made out of toilets. Now, the beauty of this is it's pretty cheap, and they don't have the money that's coming from Western governments. And we all know how much the Russians want those toilets. So whether they're just waiting for them to come to them, or they shoot them down and there's fragments and pieces of toilet shards coming down all over them, I think this is a brilliant idea. Of course, I'm not serious, but this is a pretty funny thought. That's pretty clever. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.